Hey there, have you ever been betrayed by someone you trusted at work? I'm about to share my story of how a colleague hid my report, tried to sabotage my career, and how I fought back through a lawsuit that proved I was right. This is a tale of deception, resilience, and justice. Stick around, you won't believe what happened. I was a rising star at my company, pouring my heart into every project. My latest report was a game changer, packed with data that could shift our entire strategy. I'd spent months analyzing trends, crunching numbers, and crafting recommendations. My team relied on me, and I was proud of what I'd created. But something felt off when I presented it to my manager, Sarah. She nodded, smiled, but her eyes didn't meet mine. I brushed it off as nerves, but deep down, I sensed trouble. The report was due to be shared with the board in a week. I double-checked every detail, ensuring it was flawless. My colleagues praised my work, and I felt confident. Yet, Sarah's strange behavior lingered in my mind. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Little did I know, my suspicions were about to be confirmed. The truth would unravel in ways I never imagined. This was just the beginning of my fight. My career, my reputation, everything was on the line. The day of the board meeting arrived, and I was ready to shine. I'd rehearsed my presentation, prepared for every question. But when I arrived, the room felt tense. The board members shuffled papers, avoiding my gaze. Sarah stood up, announcing she'd present the report herself. I was confused. Why wasn't I presenting my own work? She clicked through slides, but something was wrong. The data wasn't mine. The recommendations were watered down, missing key insights. My heart sank as I realized my report was gone. Sarah claimed credit, passing off a weaker version as her own. I tried to speak up, but she cut me off. The board nodded, unaware of the truth. I felt invisible, betrayed. My months of work had vanished. That night, I couldn't sleep, replaying the meeting in my head. I confronted Sarah the next day, demanding answers. She was calm, almost smug, denying everything. "Your report wasn't up to standard," she said, her voice cold. I knew she was lying. My report was meticulous. I asked to see the original file, but she claimed it was lost. My stomach churned with anger and disbelief. How could she do this? I checked my emails, my backups, anything to prove my work existed. I found a draft I'd sent to a colleague weeks earlier. It wasn't the final version, but it was something. I started piecing together evidence, determined to uncover the truth. Sarah's actions weren't just unethical, they were sabotage. I wasn't going to let her get away with it. My resolve hardened. I needed a plan. This wasn't just about a report anymore. I confided in a trusted coworker, Lisa, who'd seen my report before the meeting. She was shocked, confirming she'd read my original work and it was stellar. Lisa warned me to be careful. Sarah had influence, and people feared her. But I couldn't stay silent. I started documenting everything: emails, timestamps, drafts. I even found a metadata trail showing when my report was last accessed. It was opened by Sarah's account the night before the meeting. This was no accident. She'd deliberately hidden my work. I felt a mix of rage and validation. My evidence was growing, but I needed more. I reached out to IT, hoping they could recover the file. They were hesitant, citing company policy. I knew I was up against a wall, but I wasn't backing down. Days turned into weeks, and the stress was unbearable. I was still doing my job, but my focus was on exposing Sarah. I discreetly asked colleagues if they'd noticed anything odd. One mentioned seeing Sarah download files late at night. Another recalled her dismissing my contributions in meetings. The pieces were coming together, but I needed concrete proof. I requested a meeting with HR, laying out my concerns. They listened but seemed skeptical, asking for hard evidence. I showed them my draft and the metadata, but it wasn't enough. Sarah's reputation shielded her, and I was just a junior employee. Doubt crept in. Could I really win this? But every time I wavered, I remembered her smug face. I had to keep fighting, no matter the cost. I decided to consult a lawyer, someone who specialized in workplace disputes. She was tough, no nonsense, and believed my story. She explained that proving sabotage would be hard but not impossible. We needed to show intent, impact, and evidence of my original work. My lawyer suggested filing a formal complaint with the company first. I did, detailing everything I'd uncovered. The company launched an investigation, but it felt like a formality. Sarah was questioned, but she played innocent, claiming a miscommunication. I wasn't surprised. She was slippery. My lawyer warned me this might escalate to a lawsuit. I was scared but ready. My career was at stake, and I deserved justice. The investigation dragged on, testing my patience. While the investigation stalled, I kept digging. I found an old email where Sarah praised my report before the meeting. It was a small win, but it contradicted her claim that my work was subpar. I forwarded it to HR and my lawyer, strengthening my case. Meanwhile, Sarah started spreading rumors, saying I was unstable and overreacting. Colleagues began to distance themselves, unsure who to believe. The workplace became toxic, and I felt isolated. But Lisa stayed loyal, sharing her own concerns about Sarah's behavior. She'd seen Sarah take credit for others' work before. This wasn't just about me. It was a pattern. I realized I was fighting for everyone she'd wronged. That gave me strength to push forward. The company's investigation concluded with a slap on the wrist for Sarah. They called it a clerical error and offered me a small promotion as hush money. I was furious. They were protecting her. My lawyer agreed it was time to sue. We filed a lawsuit for workplace sabotage and defamation, citing the stolen report and Sarah's lies. The process was daunting: legal fees, depositions, endless paperwork. But I was committed. I gathered every piece of evidence: emails, drafts, metadata, witness statements. Lisa agreed to testify, risking her own job. I was terrified of the fallout but felt empowered. This wasn't just my fight anymore. It was about holding the company accountable. I was ready to see it through. The lawsuit gained traction, and the company started to sweat. They offered a settlement, but it came with a gag order. I refused. I wanted the truth out there. My lawyer was a bulldog, tearing into their weak defenses. We discovered Sarah had a history of manipulating reports for her own gain. Other employees came forward, sharing similar stories. The case was building, and I felt a flicker of hope. But the stress was relentless. Late nights, constant anxiety, and whispers at work. My family worried about me, but I couldn't stop. Sarah's actions had cost me too much. I wanted her exposed and my reputation restored. The courtroom loomed, and I braced myself for the battle. As the trial date approached, I prepared to testify. My lawyer coached me to stay calm and stick to the facts. I practiced my story, reliving every moment of betrayal. The evidence was strong. My original report, the metadata, Lisa's testimony, and now others stepping forward. Sarah's defense was crumbling, but she was still fighting dirty. She hired a top lawyer, painting me as a disgruntled employee. It stung, but I knew the truth. The night before the trial, I couldn't sleep, haunted by what-ifs. What if I lost? What if the jury didn't believe me? But I thought of my report, my hard work, and my right to justice. I was ready to face her in court. The trial began, and the courtroom was intimidating. Sarah sat across from me, avoiding my eyes. My lawyer presented our case, laying out the timeline of events. The jury listened closely as I explained how I'd created the report. I showed them my drafts, emails, and the metadata proving Sarah's access. Lisa's testimony was powerful, confirming my work's quality. The jury seemed engaged, but Sarah's lawyer was slick. He twisted my words, suggesting I was jealous of Sarah's success. I stayed calm, sticking to the truth. The evidence was on my side, but doubt lingered. What if they believed her over me? The stakes felt higher than ever. Sarah took the stand, and her performance was Oscar-worthy. She played the victim, claiming she'd never seen my report. Her lawyer argued it was a mix-up, not malice. But my lawyer was ready, cross-examining her with precision. He showed the email where she'd praised my work, catching her in a lie. Her confidence faltered, and the jury noticed. We presented the metadata, proving she'd accessed my file. The courtroom was silent as the truth sank in. I felt a surge of hope. Maybe they'd see through her. But trials are unpredictable, and I braced for anything. Every night, I reviewed the day's events, praying for justice. The trial dragged on for weeks, each day more exhausting than the last. We called more witnesses, former colleagues who'd seen Sarah's tactics. One described how she'd buried their work too. The pattern was clear, and the jury was taking notes. Sarah's lawyer tried to discredit them, but the evidence was piling up. My original report was finally recovered by IT, thanks to a backup server. It was a bombshell. Every detail matched my claims. The jury compared it to Sarah's version, seeing the stark differences. I could feel the tide turning, but I stayed cautious. Sarah was desperate, and desperate people do crazy things. During a break, Sarah approached me outside the courtroom. She offered to settle, saying it would save us both trouble. Her tone was condescending, like she was doing me a favor. I refused, knowing the truth was worth more than her money. Back in court, my lawyer hammered her with questions about her motives. Why had she accessed my file? Why lie about its quality? She stumbled, her answers weak. The jury's expressions shifted. They weren't buying her story. I felt a spark of victory, but it wasn't over. The company was still defending her, hoping to avoid a scandal. I needed the jury to see the bigger picture. Closing arguments were intense. My lawyer painted a clear picture: Sarah's sabotage, the company's cover-up, and my fight for justice. He urged the jury to hold them accountable. Sarah's lawyer spun a tale of misunderstanding, but it felt hollow. As we waited for the verdict, my nerves were shot. I replayed every moment of the trial, second-guessing myself. Had I done enough? Would the jury believe me? My lawyer was confident, but I couldn't relax. Days passed, each one agonizing. I leaned on Lisa and my family for support. They reminded me why I'd started this fight. I wasn't just fighting for me, I was fighting for fairness. The verdict came on a rainy morning, fitting my mood. The jury found Sarah guilty of workplace sabotage and defamation. The company was also liable for failing to act. I won damages, but more importantly, my name was cleared. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, and I felt tears sting my eyes. Sarah's face was stone, but I saw her defeat. My lawyer hugged me, calling it a landmark case. The company issued a public apology, and Sarah was fired. I felt vindicated, but the scars remained. The fight had taken years off me, but it was worth it. I'd proven the truth, and that was everything. After the trial, I took time to heal. The stress had left me drained, and I needed space. I started therapy, processing the betrayal and isolation. My family was my rock, reminding me of my strength. Colleagues reached out, apologizing for not supporting me sooner. Some admitted they'd been scared of Sarah. I understood, but it still hurt. The company offered me my job back, but I declined. I wanted a fresh start, somewhere I could trust my team. The lawsuit had changed me. I was tougher, wiser. I'd learned to stand up for myself, no matter the odds. My story was spreading, inspiring others to speak out. I started writing about my experience, sharing it online. People reached out, sharing their own stories of workplace betrayal. I realized how common this was, powerful people silencing others. My blog gained traction, and I found a new purpose. I wanted to help others navigate these battles. I connected with advocacy groups, speaking at events about workplace ethics. The lawsuit had given me a platform, and I wasn't wasting it. I was still healing, but I felt empowered. Sarah's actions had tried to break me, but they'd made me stronger. I was determined to turn my pain into change. My voice mattered, and I was using it. Months later, I heard Sarah had moved to another company. I worried she'd repeat her tactics, but I couldn't control that. I focused on my new path, consulting for companies on ethical practices. My lawsuit had sparked policy changes at my old company. They implemented stricter oversight and whistleblower protections. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. I felt proud knowing I'd made a difference. My blog grew, and I started a podcast, interviewing others who'd fought similar battles. Their stories fueled me, reminding me why I'd fought. I was building a community, one voice at a time. The fight was far from over, but I was ready. Reflecting on the lawsuit, I realized how much I'd grown. I'd gone from a trusting employee to a warrior for justice. The process was brutal, but it taught me resilience. I learned to trust my instincts and never back down. My lawyer became a friend, guiding me through new ventures. Lisa and I stayed close, bonded by our shared experience. I was grateful for the people who'd stood by me. The lawsuit wasn't just about winning, it was about reclaiming my dignity. I'd proven Sarah wrong, and that felt incredible. My story wasn't over, it was just beginning. I was ready for whatever came next. Starting my consulting business was daunting but exciting. I worked with companies to create fair workplaces, drawing on my experience. Clients valued my insight, and I felt fulfilled. My blog and podcast grew, reaching thousands. I was invited to speak at conferences, sharing my story. People called me an inspiration, but I just felt like me, a woman who'd fought back. I still had moments of doubt, wondering if I'd done the right thing. But every email from someone who'd read my story reminded me why I'd fought. I was making a difference, one step at a time. My past didn't define me, it shaped me. I began mentoring young professionals, especially women, on navigating workplace challenges. I taught them to document everything, trust their gut, and speak up. Many had faced similar betrayals, and I wanted them to feel empowered. My lawsuit had shown me the power of evidence and persistence. I shared those lessons, hoping to spare others my pain. My mentor inspired me with their courage. One started her own lawsuit, citing my case as motivation. I felt a ripple effect from my fight. Sarah's actions had tried to silence me, but they'd amplified my voice. I was proud of that legacy. The media picked up my story, and I did interviews with major outlets. They called it a David versus Goliath tale, and I suppose it was. I didn't feel like a hero, just someone who'd had enough. The attention brought more opportunities, speaking gigs, book deals, even a documentary pitch. I was cautious, not wanting fame to overshadow my message. But I embraced the platform, using it to advocate for change. Companies started reaching out, asking for my help with ethics training. I saw real progress, but I knew the fight was ongoing. Workplace sabotage wasn't rare, and I wanted to keep exposing it. I reconnected with old colleagues, some apologizing for staying silent. I forgave them. Fear is powerful, and I'd felt it too. We shared stories, laughing about better times. It helped me heal, closing that chapter. I focused on my new life, building my business and community. My podcast was now a top show in its niche, and I loved every episode. Listeners sent messages, saying my story gave them courage. That was my fuel, to keep going, keep speaking. Sarah had tried to erase me, but I was louder than ever. My voice was my power, and I wasn't letting it go. I started working on a book, detailing my journey from betrayal to victory. Writing was cathartic, letting me process the pain. I wanted it to be honest, not just a success story. I included my doubts, fears, and moments of weakness. Readers deserved the full truth, not a polished version. My lawyer reviewed drafts, ensuring I protected myself legally. The book was set to publish next year, and I was nervous but excited. It would reach more people, spreading my message further. I hoped it would inspire others to fight for justice. My story wasn't unique, but it could spark change. As my platform grew, I faced backlash. Some called me a troublemaker, saying I should have moved on. Online trolls attacked, but I'd faced worse. I focused on the positive, people who thanked me for speaking out. My mentor kept me grounded, reminding me why I did this. I also started a non-profit to support workplace whistleblowers. It was small but growing, offering legal aid and resources. I wanted to give others the tools I'd needed. The lawsuit had been my battle, but it opened doors for others. I felt a deep sense of purpose, stronger than ever. Looking back, I realized how far I'd come. The lawsuit had been a nightmare, but it shaped who I was. I was no longer the naive employee who trusted blindly. I was a leader, an advocate, a voice for change. My family was proud, and I was too. The scars from Sarah's betrayal were still there, but they didn't define me. I'd turned pain into power, and that was my victory. I still checked in with Lisa, who'd started her own consulting firm. We laughed about how far we'd come. The lawsuit wasn't just a win in court, it was a win for my future. My nonprofit gained traction, partnering with advocacy groups. We hosted workshops, teaching employees their rights. I loved seeing people gain confidence, ready to stand up. My book was nearing completion, and early feedback was positive. Publishers called it raw and inspiring, which felt right. I wasn't sugarcoating my story. It was messy, real, and human. I started planning a speaking tour, wanting to reach more people. The lawsuit had given me a platform, and I was using it. Sarah's actions had tried to destroy me, but they'd built something stronger. I was grateful for that irony. Sometimes, I wondered what Sarah was doing now. I heard she'd struggled to find work after the lawsuit. Part of me pitied her, but I didn't dwell on it. My focus was forward, building my business, helping others, living my truth. I'd learned to let go of anger, replacing it with purpose. My podcast was now global, with listeners from dozens of countries. I felt connected to a bigger fight, one for fairness and accountability. The lawsuit had been my crucible, forging me into someone new. I was proud of that person, scars and all. My story was proof that truth could win. As I move forward, I carry my story with pride. It's not just about a hidden report or a lawsuit, it's about standing up. I've learned that justice isn't easy, but it's worth it. My work continues, through my book, my nonprofit, and my voice. I want others to know they're not alone. If you're facing betrayal at work, document everything. Trust your instincts. Fight for your truth. I did, and it changed my life. I'm not done yet. There's more to do, more to say. My journey started with a stolen report, but it's ending with a legacy. I hope my story inspires you to find your own strength. If my story resonated with you, please subscribe to my channel. I share tips on navigating workplace challenges, stories from others who fought back, and advice on standing up for yourself. Hit that subscribe button, join our community, and let's keep pushing for fairness together.